what was going on in the days leading up to that, and then actually getting there? Like, did you expect that to go down?
Yeah, that's a good question. We always thought it could go down. We were always prepared for it to go down, but we had never had any grower.
Okay.
And
So you're a couple years in.
We're a couple years in. And he's doing that up north, and I'm not working with him. I trained him in the academy. He was a friend, but we hadn't worked together. And then other guys in like the Fresno, Central Valley, those mountains in the kind of the central part and foothills of California were doing some things. And Nate in the book, who I would later collaborate to build the marijuana enforcement team with the blessing of our chief, Mike Carrion. That's when we would find the people that were doing this work really well in their own little areas, but nobody was communicating and nobody was doing, we weren't doing a structured, organized, uniform way. The training, the weaponry, how everybody was going to be. So it was starting to go in that direction. And it took a long time to get to the point where we could actually have a team, and when that happened. So
yeah, so you basically, this task force idea first comes up after that 04 sighting. Now, prior to that 04 sighting, though, because you've been doing your job that didn't involve the cartels, but all the other parts of fish and game. Like, had you had shootouts or close calls or anything like that, or was it 12 years of more standard?
I had a lot of close calls, but I never had to actually engage, thankfully. And that was just right out of the academy. I mean, I was talking about being in Riverside County, and I'm running into, unbeknownst to me, I'm by myself. I'm calling for backup. I got people coming because I've got a guy working a spotlight in a truck down like an area called Canyon Lake, but in a rural part of Riverside County. And they're lighting, and I'm hearing gunfire, and they're shooting animals, everything they see, rabbits, deer, coyotes, whatever. And then they're parking at the end of like a spillway and going dark for a while, and I'm doing my game.
Spillway?
Yeah, like the back end of a dam where there's a runoff on the bottom of it, like a release valve of a little lake. And well, that starts a creek that's going to have a lot of wildlife potential in it, or concentrated fish. So these gangbangers basically from LA are poaching on the way in with their AKs and spotlights and all their pistols and killing anything that walks or crawls. And they black out at the end of this lake spillway and go dark. And I stay way away and just watch, blacked out. And unbeknownst to me, they're putting out a gill net to trap all the fish coming and going, to just gill net them up and take them back to LA, maybe to sell, maybe to eat, who knows. And when I go and make that stop and I darken out and crawl in behind them, and then all of a sudden light them up with the red and blues and get on the PA, it's just me. And I don't realize there's 7 or 8 gang members in that truck. And they're rolling out. I'm calling them out one at a time and proning them out for a felony car stop. And I'm like 22 years old, and I'm going, okay. By the numbers, man, like I was trained, guns on them, calling it out, staying confident, and just waiting for backup. And that night, no exaggeration, there was nobody even close. Riverside County sheriffs knew I was new in town. And that's one thing game warden's got to do, brother. We work such a big area, like you said. All of a sudden, we're assigned to an area. We're getting to know the sheriffs. We're getting to know the Forest Service rangers. We're getting to know the police officers, right? Because we're going to help them and they're going to help us.
Yeah.
Law enforcement resources. We saw this with the defund the cop BS running. We saw it through COVID. We got to be force multipliers. We're all understaffed to some level, mostly throughout most of the country. And Riverside wasn't close, so they sent their helicopter. So here comes this police helicopter from Riverside County. I hadn't even worked with these guys yet, with a spotlight on the bad guys, and they're kind of giving me this perimeter. The whole crew of gangsters were pretty compliant at that point. And I'm just going, I got to get back up, man, because I think I have 5 sets of handcuffs in this truck, 3 extra, 2 on me, and there's 8 dudes.
Well, what about the zip ties?
Yeah. I got those.
All right, there you go.
I'm going to go to those. We're going to get on it. But I had the help, and then units arrived, and I realized, okay, this isn't just checking fishermen. It's not just checking nice guys with guns. Those are most of them.
Right. Yeah.
So I had probably 20 close calls where it was borderline, coming close to having to shoot because somebody wasn't giving up a gun, or they would be on narcotics, or that kind of thing. But nothing that was so intentionally violent of somebody being in a grow and dressed a military type part, being involved in what we would later learn as a transnational criminal organization.
But when you see that in 04, you didn't get into the gunfight right there. But when you're going back and then this task force is getting set up and stuff, I mean, this has got to be somewhat of a baptism by fire for you, where you're
Absolutely.
like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like now I may, like when I go out, I might be shooting.
Yeah.
Like that's setting in
more.
now.
I look at it as more likely than not, because that's not something a patrol warden isn't going to do that job and shouldn't. A patrol deputy on a sheriff's office isn't going to just drift in and take on a grow, or shouldn't. That's a more specialized thing, that a military or SWAT unit would do. And we didn't have that formal military or SWAT unit. So we were kind of an ad hoc team with other agencies, and it was awesome until we got to where we had to get. And we were really lucky to do that. And that started in 2013. And, as Hidden War goes into, just a mind-blowing experience of not only the missions, but having the resources to do the job, having that canine Phoebe and dogs I can't mention by name that are still operational that replaced her.
I love that we got undercover dogs now.
Yeah.
We can't disclose them. They're clandestine purposes.
Clandestine purposes.
Someone's going to be like, oh, her name's Maddie. We'll call her out. Maddie, get the fuck over here.
Get over here.
That's John's fault for saying it on a fucking podcast.
Damn it, Julian. You made me talk. I love it. But no, that would lead to what we needed to be. Yeah. And now that team's they're overwhelmed with the way the regulation structure is, and it will hopefully change down the road. But
not according to Newsom's California values.
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't want to change it.
Nope.
He's already said Trump's the body's not even cold yet. He's not even in office yet, and they're already doing that.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah. So that's where we're at, and now just trying to really get the big picture out. So then I was focused on the cannabis problem, right?
Quick, I'm sorry to cut you off, John.
No,
I just don't want to lose this in the middle of it. You talked about that story in 2005 before people knew the full context.
Right.
Can you just take me back there for a second and the build up to that? So this was the first shootout.
Yeah.
You've already laid out what happened. Your buddy took like straight through both legs and everything, like crazy shit.
Yeah.
But what was going on in the days leading up to that, and then actually getting there? Like, did you expect that to go down?
Yeah, that's a good question. We always thought it could go down. We were always prepared for it to go down, but we had never had any grower combat us. The sheriffs hadn't. In fact, I don't think anybody in the country at that point, I know no one in the country at that point, any agency, had a grower hit an officer with a firearm in an attack. No one had been shot. And the fact that happened that day, and it was a game warden, naturally got a lot of attention. Oh, yeah. It got a lot of attention from our governor. It got a lot of attention from a lot of news crews. We had national news crews there, like all 3 days into the weekend. It was on a Friday. They secured the site. It had to go, it was a long drawn out thing that brought a lot of attention to, game warden near fatally shot. You see him being airlifted out, the whole 9 yards. And then the question comes up, what are game wardens doing on a drug raid? That's not their job. And now our director and our chief, Nancy Foley, at the time, were getting a lot of political heat from the governor's office, but they're like, hold on, it is our job. The biggest environmental crimes we're seeing against water and poisoning with poisons we don't even understand yet are happening in these cartel grow sites. That's our mandate. That's like the forte of what game wardens should be doing. So she held the ground and fought that, and that kept us involved. That day going in, we had our weaponry, we had all our kits, stealth, stalking, camouflaged. One thing we didn't have enough of, and this was a big debrief and a big learning lesson for us and the sheriff's office moving forward, was the latest and greatest trauma medical supplies that were, being developed and used over in the sandbox, like the anticoagulant Quick Clot for
the sandbox?
Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Afghanistan, Iraq.
You say that like I'm going to know that. Yeah. Come on now. I'm a goddamn civilian.
You are. My bad. But yeah, we fondly refer to it as the sandbox.
The sandbox. Oh my God.
Those guys that have fought over there, not me, but the veterans I worked with on the team, they joke about it that way. But yeah, we didn't have enough trauma supplies that day. We didn't have anticoagulant. We didn't have enough tourniquets. None of that trauma medicine technology or knowledge was being put out to anybody but specialized SWAT type units and special forces groups. That changed immediately after that gunfight. We didn't have enough people. We should have had more officers for a grow. We didn't know it was as big as it was. We had a scout. We had rangers helping us. We thought it was, 7,000 to 10,000 plants at the most. More like the 5,000 to 7,000 mark. And then when we went up in there, that grow that we encountered the bad guy and got in the gunfight with, where my partner got injured near fatally. Later, when all those tactical teams would come to back us up when we're getting off the hill and getting him to the hospital, and now we're being debriefed and interviewed for our first gunfight, which I hadn't been involved in, and that was a long day away from my partner in the hospital going into emergency surgery. Now there's like up to 10 other grow complexes on that mountain.
Right there, yeah.
And guys that I work with are coming in from other parts of the state, setting up with night vision in the mountains, just hearing these guys trickle out, trying to grab everybody they could. That mountain was taken over by the cartel. It hadn't been touched in probably a decade.
A decade.
This
cartel is just running an entire mountain in California, no problem.
Yeah, it's open space. It's county land that doesn't see much, people, because it's very remote. Even rangers they seldomly go in there, and that's why they got away with it so long. Wow. And it was really hard to detect.
You know what I keep picturing in my head is like a parallel image. You ever watch True Detective?
Love, especially the first season.
Yeah, first season is probably the greatest season.
One of the best shows on television.
Yeah. So that in like episode 4 or 5 of that season, when Rust and Cole happen upon that meth cabin
or
big whatever
eerie encampment back there.
And they come through like these woods and it's all like quiet, and then suddenly open up the bush and it's just like a dude naked in a mask like walking around and cooking meth, and they're like, what the fuck?
That was the cliffhanger into the next episode. Blew my mind. That's
like
the vibe.
That's what I keep picturing with you, where you're just like in the middle of the wilderness. Oh, look, a mountain lion. Holy shit, cartels.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
That's probably the best analogy I've heard anybody say, because that was the shock factor. It was like something you don't expect, even though it's your natural operating environment where I'm the most comfortable. I mean, put me on a trail in quiet woods somewhere to deal with bad people or to, deal with problem animals, whatever the case may be. That's our comfort zone. And that was very uncomfortable to see what we saw that first day in 04.
Whoa.
Yeah, for sure.
So after the shootout, you mentioned the one in 06 is the camouflage example where they would cover it all up and everything. Did you ever end up in a shootout at that one?
No,
you didn't.
No, that one, the guys, we ended up catching a bunch of guys away from their guns, and we found a bunch of guns in that little encampment that was, kind of that hut in the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that one did not get violent because we had so many civilian groups, around and in the community that was there. Everybody was safe on that one, but we had 2 more in the Saratoga and like Cupertino foothills, again, another affluent west side of the Silicon Valley, where guys just were, running around with guns. We're going to make our approach with our light runners, and they're pulling guns on us, and we had no choice.
They're pulling guns on you, so you got to shoot them.
Yeah, because they're going to kill us otherwise.
Some of these involve kills where you're taking guys out.
Yeah, those were of the gunmen we encountered in those 2. Those gunmen were killed. And then in the one in 2017, that gunman was injured, not fatally. And then
way later in
2017. We had 6 total combined, either individually or collectively as a team, starting with the one in 05 where we had a game warden shot. And that's where the eye-opener realization of what we were dealing with obviously was a whole new world. And with that, Julian, that's when we got more training. We got the support from administration. If you're going to stay in it, now we could go do what we needed to do.
Watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.